Testing, testing. How is this sounding to folks out there online? Can you hear us? Good morning and welcome to our adult education class this morning. We are in week 5 of a series exploring stories of reconciliation, and we have a special presentation for you this morning. But before we get too far into it, I want to let everybody know about some logistics for next Sunday. Next Sunday, of course, is June 19th, which is the holiday Juneteenth. And here at FPC, we are having a special Sunday dedicated to honoring the folks of Faith Presbyterian Church, which is a historic Black Presbyterian church that merged with First Pres in the 1960s. And so next Sunday, we have our whole Sunday morning dedicated to honoring the folks of Faith Presbyterian Church. We will have one combined worship service at 10 a.m., which means that the Christian education hour is at 9 a.m. So next Sunday, Christian Ed is earlier than usual. It's at 9 a.m. We will have our same formats either here in person in the chapel or online via live stream, and we'll be meeting at 9. What our plan for that week is to screen the documentary Celebrating Faith, which we have been watching in little episodes over the last several months in worship. It's a documentary that Guy Dunham directed, involving a whole lot of research into the history of the congregation of Faith Presbyterian Church. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to actually watch the whole documentary all at once. Many of us have seen some or all of the episodes one at a time, but to actually watch the whole thing together and then have a chance to have some discussion about it. So that will be next Sunday at 9 a.m. as part of our Sunday Honoring Faith Presbyterian Church in the chapel or online. Well, today we have some exciting stories to lift up to you all. As you probably recall, we have been, for the last number of weeks, looking at the stories of different people who are taking up God's call to be agents of reconciliation in the world. And we've looked at people doing that in all different ways. We heard Ken Hickman share a bit about the history of the peace candle that we have on our communion table here at FPC that came about after a trip that one of our former ministers made to Russia during the height of the Cold War, and also some other work that people here in York, Pennsylvania did to try to foster peace and understanding in the midst of those tensions of the Cold War. The next week, we heard a bit about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, as well as hearing part of an interview from a person who was involved in serving as a translator for that commission in the aftermath of apartheid in South Africa. Last week, we had a special guest joining us via Zoom named Rick Palamas, and he talked about his work with the Christian peacemaker teams who are trained to be deployed into war zones and conflict areas and hope that their nonviolent, peaceful presence can somehow affect change. So we've been looking at all different ways that people are trying to carry out these teachings that we learned about in the Confession of 1967. Which, as you might recall, Pastor Allison and I led a 3-week series in May looking at this document from our Presbyterian Book of Confessions. And that document uses this idea of reconciliation as the central motif to talk about God's work in the world and the work that the church is called to do in all areas of life. And so the confession talks about exploring what might it mean to be agents of reconciliation when it comes to all different things, whether it's poverty or war or racism or what have you. And one of the areas that confession lifts up for us to consider is, what does it mean to think about being agents of reconciliation when it comes to issues related to sex and gender? We know, of course, that far too often we do not have gender equality in our society. We know that far too often sexuality, which is supposed to be a site of love and care, becomes a site of violence and exploitation and dehumanization. And the confession invites us to think about even those parts of life in light of Christ's reconciling work. And so we are going to hear about the work of a woman who is doing some extraordinary things related to this area of life. We're going to hear from a person named Reverend Becca Stevens, who is an Episcopal priest living in Tennessee. And she has a ministry and a nonprofit called Thistle Farms, which is an organization that ministers to women who are survivors of human trafficking, of forced prostitution, very often dealing with addictions. And Reverend Becca Stevens has created this ministry that offers a safe and healing place for women who are trying to recover from the violence they have suffered, the abuse they have suffered at the hands of human traffickers, giving them a safe space to heal, to find community, and to find job skills and employment. And so this company, Thistle Farms, creates handcrafted bath and body care products, as well as textiles and home goods. Their products are sold at Whole Foods, as well as some other national retailers. And so we have a series of videos that we are going to watch to hear Reverend Becca Stevens, as well as some of the women who are part of the Thistle Farms community, tell their story. Yeah, Pastor Kyle.
I just want to mention that her husband is a man named Marcus Hummond. Marcus Hummond is a deep believer in Christ also, and wrote the song, God Bless the Broken Road.
Oh, wow.
A famous song. He's written a lot, he's a huge songwriter. They often will be at the Festival of Homiletics together, and he'll have a group of songwriters, and then she'll speak. And they're a passionate couple for Christ, and just a wonderful, they're just a wonderful.
That's awesome. And you actually know her husband a bit, right, Kyle?
Yeah. I'm not like best friends with him, but yeah, I've met him and connected with him.
Well, if we have time at the end, we are actually going to listen to a song. Because the music does express this vision so powerfully. So we're gonna play some video clips here. As always, we will have plenty of time not as always, but as we aspire to do, we will have some time for conversation. And folks at home, we invite your feedback as well. And as always, the way that you can do that is on Facebook. I will be monitoring the Facebook comments here. So at any time, feel free to chime in with your observations and your thoughts. And folks here in person, in between videos, we will have some time for conversation as well. And hopefully this ambient mic should be able to pick you up wherever you are. So people at home, let us know if you can hear them okay. So this first video is pretty brief, and it is just going to introduce us to Reverend Becca Stevens. And this is just a brief introduction, but it gives us a little bit of a glimpse into her speaking ministry, the ways that her work and her ministry has really kind of gotten a national spotlight. So here's a brief introduction to Reverend Becca.
Love each other well, we can change the world.
So love heals.
Love heals.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in honoring CNN hero Becca Stevens.
I am standing here tonight barefoot, and I do that with compassion and solidarity for all the women who are still walking the streets. I'm Becca Stevens. I'm an author, a speaker, a priest, and a social entrepreneur. I founded more than 7 not-for-profits, and I'm the president and founder of Thistle Farms, which is a not-for-profit that's provided sanctuary and healing for women survivors of prostitution, trafficking, and addiction for more than 23 years. Whether I'm speaking to a not-for-profit, a mission-driven business, or a faith community, my hope is to both inspire and challenge you, to bring your idealism into your work, to bring hope to your communities. I want to share how we can put our whole selves in, shake things up, and turn things around. A lot of times I think our leadership is squelched because of the enormity of issues, thinking that our time and talent and resources are limited in some way. The crazy part is not thinking that doing something small can make a big difference. The crazy part is thinking we don't do anything and something's going to change. I don't arrive with one keynote, one message for everybody. I want to know who I'm speaking to and how I can use my time to inspire, entertain, and challenge everybody in the room. Everybody that comes to you in your businesses brings a story with them, a story of brokenness, a story of hope, a story of resiliency, a story of shame, a story of courage. All of these things, we all bring them. I will assure your group that this is the right time, that this is the right group of people that can have an impact on the work of love in this world. We arise and we shine so that we can help this world remember how beautiful and lovely it is and will become. 1, 2, 3.
So, as you can see, she is a dynamic presenter, an inspiring leader, and she has gotten a lot of attention from national media outlets, from various groups that have brought her in to give keynote addresses. But what is the work that she's actually doing? Well, this next video is going to introduce us to her ministry, Thistle Farms.
I was trapped in a 10-block radius for well over 20 years, and I sold myself as if I was a commodity, and I never dreamed that I would get my life back.
In my household, there was a lot of abuse that led me to using drugs, and then it led me also into the prison system. Being as young as I was, I felt like there was no way out.
My life was so, oh God, it was so much confusion.
Thistle Farms is a justice social enterprise dedicated to helping women who are survivors of trafficking, addiction, and prostitution recover and heal. None of the women that we serve at Thistle Farms ended up on the streets by themselves. It took a whole bunch of broken systems and broken communities that really rolled out a red carpet. That story is borne by the women of Thistle Farms, who on average are first raped between the ages of 7 and 11 and first hit the streets between 14 and 16 years old.
Women just don't choose to be on the streets or selling themselves. If you go back, you will find some traumatic circumstances that have happened in each woman's life that have made them feel like this is all I have, or this is the only way that I'm going to get someone to love me.
At Thistle Farms, we believe that women deserve a second chance at life. But the amazing thing to me is many of the women we serve, this is their first chance at life. You know, if they entered into trafficking at the age of 5 or 6, they never had a fair shake. And this may be the first time a community has invested in them to say, now's your time. We do this by providing safe housing, good jobs, and a lifelong sisterhood of support.
When I came here, my whole world changed. Everything. Everything that I needed was provided for me, from mental health meds to the physical help that I needed, dental, vision, free of charge for me.
Nobody cared about my background because I probably wouldn't have a job. You know, it was just a blessing to be able to come somewhere and to get training.
See, I struggled so long with knowing if I was loved. That had a lot to do with me being in addiction for so long, because I didn't think anybody cared, anybody loved. But every day, the women in this community. They love me.
I have never been welcomed and not judged. And in my interview, my boss said, it doesn't matter about your past or what you're in prison for or what you did. None of that matters. Tell me what you do now for your recovery, for yourself, for your sobriety. And that was different. It was something I had never experienced.
People will love you so much that they love you back to life. I truly believe that love does heal. I like the fact that I go to work and I pay bills, and it's just different. It's just different being here on the other side.
Without Thistle Farms, I don't know exactly where I'd be. I don't know.
I had always been in a situation where I got to give something to get something. But this was one of those programs that we give and we give and we give, and all we want you to do is learn how to love yourself. And we're gonna keep loving on you until you learn how to. And now I love me to death. I do. I love me to death now. I do.
I wish I had dreamed bigger sooner. I really do. I mean, I think I spent too much time thinking this was really small. And loving people is a really big idea, and it means that we have to be big enough to live into that idea. It's about remembering the amazing things that love has done and believing in the amazing things that are still to come. It reminds us to, stay rooted in that small circle where we believe one candle lit can bring another woman home. But it also means believing that we make a difference in this world and that together we can be a powerful symbol for how love heals. And that's what we're going to do. So we're just hitting our stride. We are the largest social enterprise of its kind in the U.S. But, we're just beginning to light a candle. And we're going to do it because people still love us and hope with us, and we are committed to growing the movement that reminds the whole world that love is the most powerful force for change there is.
Thanks, KG. So we got to hear some little tiny bits of the stories of some of the women who have been part of the Thistle Farm community. And I would love to hear from both our folks at home online and people here in the room if any particular stories or lines, anything that they said in that video really stood out to you. Yeah, go ahead.
This is a little off-center, but the men that do this, is it purely because they want the money or the power, or why?
Yeah. That's the $1 million question. I hope those at home could hear. Dee Dee asked about the men who are the perpetrators of this trafficking and what motivates them. Is it money? Is it power? Oh boy, if we knew that, wouldn't it be so easy to solve? Probably some combination of the above. Yeah, Kyle.
I was just thinking that, there used to be back up until maybe the 70s or 80s, what we call public theologians. And they were typically people like Paul Tillich, people in the ivory towers of the seminaries. It seems to me she's like the new kind of public theologian.
Yeah. Then there really is a theological message here. It's not couched in churchy terms. It would be sort of intelligible to anybody, but there's really a theological message at the heart of this.
She's an Episcopal priest.
She is.
But the lady that said, I love me a lot, what does she say?
Yeah.
She learned to love herself. We're going to continue to allow her.
Yeah, that woman who talked about coming into this community and having no sense of her own self-worth, and then being surrounded by this community of experiencing love from other people and learning how to actually love herself. Yeah. I'm reminded of this line in the Confession of 1967 that we talked about, so many weeks ago, that is talking about the new life in Christ, which all of us are invited to partake in. And it says, the new life takes shape in a community in which people know that God loves and accepts them. They therefore accept themselves and love others, knowing that no one has any ground on which to stand except God's grace. So it's a very theological concept. It's right here in our Book of Confessions that we learn to be able to experience God's love and therefore be transformed by experiencing that love in a community. Yeah. Did anything else from this video really strike anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
I think Beck made mention of giving people a second chance, and she said for a lot of these people, it's their first chance.
Yeah.
Because of starting so early, never
Right.
had a first chance.
Yeah, sort of pushing back against that idea that people are getting a second chance and saying it's their first chance. And I loved how she said near the beginning that we can't sort of look at any of these individual women's situation in a vacuum, that it's, systems have failed them, communities have failed them, that it's not just personal decisions that they made, but that they're in a system that is set up to harm and abuse and oppress people. Yeah. All right. Well, friends at home, if you want to share any thoughts, I am monitoring the comments here on Facebook. But if we're ready, we can take a look at another really brief video. And this one is a trailer for a documentary. There is a full-length documentary talking about the work of Thistle Farms. But this is just the trailer, so it's really short. But it is I think a nice little glimpse into what they're doing here.
We don't wind up in jail because we wake up one day and say, I want to be a crack addict today. I want to be a prostitute today. I want to be trafficked. No, we had dreams.
We need to change our vocabulary from this question, what's wrong with you, to what happened to you.
I got to Thistle Farms because a very troubled family member came into our family home, severely injured my mom and shot my father. And I was 12 years old. And I cannot forget, I remember running over to my dad, and just as I got there, he fell, which resulted in my being partially trapped underneath my dying father. So my dad died that day, and my whole world changed.
Human trafficking is an extremely common problem here in the United States, in your backyard. That's a fact.
Nobody, I think, expected the results that we got. 85% of Tennessee's counties reported at least one case of human trafficking in the previous 24 months.
I grew up with a very nice family, was upper middle class, I had lots of love in my life, and it still happened to me.
Oh, I have a record. I have over 100 arrests in Nashville alone. I lived in my past for years. I allowed my past to hold me hostage, and that's what kept me out on the streets for so long.
What led you to come to prison in the first place? And what can help you not only stay out of prison, but to never return?
It had to be safe to dig down and heal from some stuff that I said I was gonna carry to my grave. But I saw other women doing that too, so it kind of freed me up.
I don't think everybody ended up in there, obviously, because it went really well. I think most of us are in there is because it didn't go so well. And that's pretty powerful. There's diversity, and I celebrate it, and I'm grateful for it. But there's also a common bond that is fierce.
So that full film exists. I'm not quite sure how folks would go about watching it, but I think it is. If you go on the Thistle Farms website, there is a link there. You can rent it or buy it. And that film was the winner of the Best Tennessee Feature at the Nashville Film Festival in 2021. So that is a full-length, feature documentary about their work. Anything there anybody wants to talk about? I know it was short. Yeah, Sally.
I worked at a juvenile detention center for a number of years, and I went in with all kinds of preconceptions that the people in detention, were bad kids or whatever. And what I learned was that 98 to 99% of the kids in juvenile detention were either victims of abuse or victims of violence. And there's often a connection between what they did and what happened to them. And so on the one hand, we need to consequence people for inappropriate conduct. But on the other hand, juvenile detention in particular should be a place of healing and restoration as opposed to a place of punishment, is what I learned when I went there.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Sally. That is so true. And I loved what they said in the film. We don't ask, what did you do? We ask, what happened to you? Yeah, and what a powerful sort of changing of the frame that is. How that can really dramatically transform how we see people and how we interact with people. Yeah, Linda.
Yeah, I heard people talking about human trafficking in a couple organizations I belong to, and I was surprised just how much there is in New York. And in 83, they said when you're on 83, you've probably been passed. So that is one of the routes that take these women from here to here or whatever, is one of the main routes too. And that it's just, you go to Walmart, every time now I go past a nail place, or certain different places in York, I think, I wonder if one of them's in there, because, and it's sad, and stuff, because the thing is, it's very possible. And it certainly was a few years ago, and I guess it's still,
Yeah.
bad, but I think they're watching much more now than 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. But yeah, the way that it kind of can just fly under the radar.
You're just innocent. You just go in and you're doing this and this, and you have no idea that girl over there in the nail place, what she's gone through. You just think everything's far away.
Right.
And it's right here.
Yeah. And the person interviewed in that film talking about living in Tennessee and saying that they were really shocked to learn that every single county in Tennessee had ongoing investigations into human trafficking. And yeah, just thinking this isn't a kind of suffering that is local at somewhere else, but we don't necessarily know what's right in our neighborhood. Well, this next little clip that we are going to watch is actually from a CNN interview. And it's a little bit longer, and Reverend Becca Stevens was named a CNN hero. I guess their news organizations profiles different people, and she was selected as one of those people to be profiled. So here we go.
It's in every community. Trafficking, abuse, addiction.
I was like a slave to the drugs. I lost everything.
I just trying to trick wherever as long as I could get one more hit. I can remember thinking that I'm gonna die out here.
When I was a small child, I experienced sexual molestation for years. It gave me a lot of compassion. Those scars are deep, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. We have 5 residential communities for women to come and heal.
Everything was free. They fed me, they clothed me. It made me feel worthy.
What about you? How was work? I immediately felt the love. I don't feel alone anymore.
I see all this beautiful furniture and plants. For the first time in a long time, I was reminded of what home was.
We're changing who? Changing ourselves.
They didn't say, what did you do? They said, what happened to you?
The women that we were serving were still dirt poor. So we created this bath and body care company.
The lavender and the peppermint, it calms you. I'm working hard for my own money. It feels wonderful.
It's just giving love. I got 20 years clean because I got a lifeline 19 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Once you get out of that meeting last night, somebody showed me the way out, and I've been able to go and show other women the way out.
What I realized is how powerful love can be for healing.
Before, I was full of darkness, and now I am full of light.
Now I'm capable.
Now I am a conqueror.
We're just a community of women helping each other.
So I just think it's really remarkable how this ordained minister in a Christian church, clearly doing this ministry that is born out of her religious convictions, is so able to talk about it in a way that gets the attention of the outside world, and that this thoroughly secular news organization says, we want to know more about what's going on there. Any other reflections on that little clip?
I just think the basic idea that people can change, God's grace, is something we lose touch with.
Yeah. The basic idea that people can change. It's something that, yeah, it sounds so simple, but we often really do forget, or we often fail to actually take it seriously. And then that people, once they've experienced transformation, are able to then share that with others. They talked about that here too. That it's not just, I'm going to get my life together and conquer my addiction and go and like make bank for myself and get my own life and I'm out of here. It's, I've experienced this love and I want to help share that love with other people, and I'm going to be committed to this community, and I'm going to help welcome others. Yeah, yes, Allie.
Well, and just the genius of there needed to be some sort of work. So they create a company that both gives work experience and income to the women and to the organization. That was a piece that needed to be there.
Right.
To work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they're getting job skills that will be transferable. They're making products that other people will enjoy. I think they don't talk about this explicitly, but when I was watching these videos last night, I sort of wondered, is there something so profound about the fact that these are women who have had violence done to their bodies, and actually being able to make products that are for the care of their body, and to actually somehow experience redemption even in the very places on their skin that they've been abused.
What was the logo that kept coming up? Love heals.
Love heals.
Bodies
Yeah.
or something.
Love heals everybody, I
Everybody.
think. Yeah.
One of my best friends is on the board of Thistle Farms.
Oh, wow.
And I can promise you that is not something that they're just like getting a bunch of money from and exploiting their people. There is the deep understanding that this is creative entrepreneurship for the purposes of furthering the mission of Thistle Farms.
Yeah.
So it's highly, a lot of integrity from the top down.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good to hear. That's so good to hear. Yeah. Anne is chiming in on Facebook about this idea of, people changing. And she reminds us that even the Apostle Paul changed, was transformed by God, was transformed by a community. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anne. So yeah, it's easy to forget, but it is a core part of our Christian belief and our Christian history and our story of us existing as the community that we do. Yeah.
She also Becca mentioned something about you need to dream big enough. Your dreams need to be bigger than what you might think.
Yeah.
And it spoke to me. I think it speaks to us, our church.
Yeah, absolutely. She said that she wished she had dreamed bigger sooner.
And that love is a huge action. Like loving others is a huge action.
Right, absolutely. Sometimes we sort of have this idea of love that it's just so small and just what I do with my closest handful of people that I know super intimately. And that's important. But that she helps us see that it is also this big thing. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, well, we've got one more clip here that tells a bit more about their story.
Thistle Farms residential program is called Magdalene. They're 2-year homes where women can stay for free without any authority living in the house. It's a simple model, but it's critical for survivors of trafficking, addiction, and prostitution to have both space and time to heal. We figured out when the women came that they were doing great work in their recovery and making restitution with the courts and their families. The problem was they were still dirt poor. And that's why we started Thistle Farms, the bath and body care company run by the women. We've also diversified the social enterprise. So we have this cafe, we have the studios, 480 retail outlets, and 18 global partners.
You know, I walked a 10-block radius for well over 20 years, and I could not find a way out. And I was just trapped. I had lost all hope.
I was in a dark place. I came from molestation. I came from running away at the age of 15 and found my way using drugs, and that took me for a whole loop. I became homeless. I've been arrested 87 times. I lost custody of my kids, and I was just lost and bitter, looking for hope.
The women who come into Thistle Farms share a universal story around sexual violence and assault that they've really carried on their individual backs. On average, the women that we serve are first raped between the ages of 7 and 11, and they hit the streets between the ages of 14 and 16 years old.
I used to use for 15 years. I stayed in one facility.
None of the women we serve in the community of Thistle Farms ended up on the streets by themselves. It takes a bunch of broken systems and communities that really roll out a red carpet for the women to find their way into being runaways, to being trafficked, to being addicted, to being jailed, to being prostituted. So it makes sense that it takes communities to welcome the women home and provide the resources and provide a place to restore all of us into a community together.
What's different about Magdalene is you don't have to pay $1 or anything when you first walk through the door.
They help me with all my needs, like hygiene, dental, food, clothes, a ride. They help me really get back on track.
It was very difficult to get a job because of my police background, and they hired me. They let me work the register and be accountable for money. They let me go to the bank. But they allowed me the opportunity to develop job skills.
And they did not ask me, what did you do? They asked, what happened to you?
Made me cry. The best thing about my life today is that I lost my kids, and so I have 4 grandkids, and so the things that I wasn't able to do for my kids, I'm able to do for my grandkids. Like go to the PTA meetings, show up for lunch, drop them off at school just to hear them say, Nanny, can you help me with some homework? Even though I might not know, because I've been out of school for so long. And they love us till we're able to love ourselves.
For 20 years, we've been a witness to the truth that love is the most powerful force for social change in the world. It is that way because people want to hope with us. They want to do this work with us, and we welcome you to the circle.
Love is the most powerful force for social change in the world. Yeah, Dee Dee.
Is there any organization that looks into the women's experiences and goes to the man that did it and prosecutes them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that there certainly are people who are advocates on, the criminal side of things, to have, charges be brought and working with, district attorneys and that sort of thing. I know there are people doing that work. I don't know too much about what that entails. I think that's mostly going to be involving, law enforcement and the courts and that sort of thing. So that's a very specialized sort of advocacy. But I know that those organizations are out there. Yeah, that's an important part of it, and it's, how do we actually make sure that justice is done and people who are harming vulnerable women are held accountable and prevented from doing it more? That's the whole other side of this equation. But it is, I think, very different work that takes very different skills from the sort of things that Reverend Stevens is doing. Yeah, I'm really struck by this idea that change, whether we're talking on either side, on the legal side or on the personal side, that it's most powerful when it's motivated by love. And that's an idea. And it doesn't always feel that way. We often feel that the powers of evil and the powers of injustice and the powers of selfishness are more powerful than love. And that's what, I find so striking about the ending of the Confession of 67, when we looked at that in class a number of weeks ago, that really reminds us that we are called to hope and to be, reassured that Christ really is making all things new, that reconciliation really is effective, even if it doesn't feel like it quite yet. Yeah, Sally.
That just popped in my head was the woman caught in adultery, and he just says, okay, whoever hasn't sinned, throw the first stone.
Right.
And it's an opportunity for change and healing in her life.
Yeah. And it makes me think, how much do we not know about her circumstances? How much do we not know about what might have happened to her? Yeah. Yeah, Bill.
Question about the bigger vision, and then at one point they showed the map with other dots. Are there other programs that was part of as a result of that, or are those?
Yeah, great question. So there, she talked about Magdalene House, which is the residential part of Thistle Farms, and that is in Nashville, Tennessee. But they do have a network of affiliated ministries all over the country. And on their website, they, I think, have a list of all of those. They also host, conferences and trainings for other people and other organizations that might be doing similar work. Here in York County, in New Freedom, we have an organization called Sparrow House that is doing similar work. And KG said that his mother-in-law is on the board of Sparrow House, and that their staff actually recently went to a conference that was hosted by Thistle Farms to help network with other people doing similar work. So I don't think I think Sparrow House is independent. I don't think they're part of the Thistle Farm network, but they're doing similar sorts of things, and are that recently went to this conference to network with other people doing the same sorts of ministries. So we've got one more really short video of Becca talking, and then we're going to close out with a song.
For years, Thistle Farms has walked along survivors of trafficking, addiction, prostitution, and exploitation. The truth is, the women that we have served over all those years were victims long before they were criminals. Whether it was because of childhood trauma, the violence and vulnerability of poverty, or because of generational trauma, women never had a fair shake. Thistle Farms was never about just helping a subculture of women overcome their individual trauma. It was always about all of us coming together to heal. It was always about continuing to challenge a culture that kept the secrets of abusers, that criminalized victims, that turned a blind eye in complacency to the suffering that women have known. It was always about engaging the wider community to be that healing force. It was always about challenging our complacency, our silence, and our unjust systems. And so it is for that reason we have opened up an office in Washington, D.C. So we invite you to come on this journey with us, to listen and to learn, to reflect on how it is you can be part of this movement for women's freedom in your own communities. Be a part of this. Truth that in the end, love is the most powerful force for change in the world. For years, Thistle Farms has walked along survivors of trafficking, addiction, prostitution, and
So there, she doesn't go into as much detail as I wish. She doesn't answer Dee Dee's question, but she does start to talk about this idea that as much as we can do the work of loving people in a local community, this is part of a bigger, more systemic issue. And so I definitely want to learn more about what her work in Washington, D.C. is and what kind of advocacy she's doing. But recognizing that those two parts have to work together, the sort of caring for individuals and communities, and that's connected to questions of policy and advocacy and the legal system and all of that. Well, we are going to close out our time together with a song. But before we do, I want to remind you all that next week, Adult Ed is at 9 a.m., same place, different time, because we have our combined service at 10, and we will be screening the documentary celebrating Faith Presbyterian Church. So we'll have a chance to watch that whole thing all together and have a little bit of time to talk about it. So join us next Sunday at 9 a.m. here in the chapel or online. And now we'll close out with this song. This song is called Love Heals, which has obviously been the driving theme of the work of Thistle Farms and of Reverend Becca Stevens. This song is actually sung by her son, and it is produced by her husband, who Pastor Kyle mentioned knowing a bit. And her son does the lead vocals, but the background vocals are done by Allison Krauss, who is one of the famous folk singers in America working right now, as well as backup vocals from various women who are part of the Thistle Farm community. So we'll close our time together here with this song, Love Heals.
Hate kills, birds fly, rocks roll, tears cry, and love heals. Whiskey burns, records scratch, wheels turn, sparks catch, and love heals. Oh, I've never seen a broken heart, one shattered and torn apart, that could not come back together. And I've never known a life so heavy, couldn't stand on legs unsteady, and one day run by as a feather. Baby, here's a deal. Love heals. Sunsets, suns rise, all regrets and alibis. Dreamers dream, some dreams come true. We're caught between a hell that's coffee black and heaven that's sky blue. Oh, I've never seen a broken heart, one shattered and torn apart, that could not come back together. Oh, I've never known a life so heavy, couldn't stand on legs unsteady, and one day run by as a feather. Baby, here's a deal. Love heals. And everything that's shiny one day gets broke. It's some kind of mystery, but this much I know. Love heals.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next week here in the chapel or on the live stream at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. next week.